Good evening and welcome to Sugar and Silk, brought to you exclusively by Ace Podcast Nation. My name is Ben Doughty.
My name is Michael Silk Olajide.
Well, Silk, you're looking resplendent today, by the way. You are looking like an extra from the Warriors or something like that. I can't be oblivious to that.
Wow, did you get you got the Warriors over there?
Listen, yeah, it's a cult movie over here too, and you know, the black guy with the dreads who gets shot at the start of the movie.
Yeah.
Some people rumored that was based on my old friend Mitch Blood Green, and Mitch Green certainly thinks so. And when I met him 20 years ago now and did the interview we did and all the rest of it,
Yeah.
he was saying, "I should have got some money for that," because he believes that character. Very short.
Wait a minute, that was his name was Cyrus, right? Cyrus is the one that got shot.
Yeah, and he gets shot right at the start of the movie. Yeah, I mean, he's proclaiming like Roman's friends, countrymen. Next minute, someone shot him.
Yeah. Well, how is that? I don't see how that's Mitch Blood Green, and Mitch Blood didn't get shot either.
He didn't, but he was a very big black man with dreads, and I guess that's enough, isn't it? For the intellectual property question.
I guess so.
Yeah.
And how tall was Bob Marley?
Yeah, well, sure. Maybe, perhaps it was based on him, But so perhaps do worry. Everything's not going to be all right. But yeah, I got to be honest, Silk. I am jealous. So I see your gathering, this sensational gathering organised by Iceman John Scully of all the old ex-fighters and champions and the amateurs and the pros and all the rest of it. Yeah. I really badly wanted to be at that thing. I mean, I still need to meet you because that still hasn't happened yet, even though you were in my country last week. But
last week we were closer than we ever been.
That looked fantastic. That thing that you were a part of. Do you want to talk about it a little bit before we get into the show?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, John Scully, by his own efforts, by his own efforts, he put this thing together, and John's one of these guys that's really interesting. He's one of these guys that, like, no matter what, you meet him, whether you're fighting against him or not, whatever it is, there's something really inviting about him. He's a really good man. He's a strong person. He's a man of his word, and he's a real boxer. You know what I mean? He did it for real at the highest levels. So, so he understands, the fighters' conversation. He understands the managers, the trainers, the fans from all areas. He considers everything. He brings it all together, and he put together a real. Something that works, like something that works for boxers. And it almost seems like it's just so coordinated. He doesn't just throw it together, but obviously he doesn't have the way these other sports have millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars to put behind something like this. Just him with his own ingenuity and his contacts and his personality and the fact that he doesn't forget anything. I can't even believe it. I'm like, yo, did you fight? Because there's nothing erased from his memory. He remembers guys, like he'll look at them and he'll say, oh yeah, I saw you in 1979 and you were da-da-da. And I'm like, wow.
He'd be like, you were like in the Ohio State Fair semifinals on the 17th of July.
Exactly, yes. And this is who you fought, and this is how you fought him, and this is what you wore. And I remember your shoes were like this, and I'm like, oh my God, that's incredible.
Yeah, no, Scully really is one of us, and it's it's great all the work he does raising money for fighters like Wilfred Benitez and
he did. So he did a shirt. He got a new shirt. It was it showed it was about this last get together, and I know he did this shirt and he sold it and he raised at least $1,000 for Wilfred Benitez, at least. Yeah. And it was incredible. It really was. And everyone was there. Tony Zale's people were there. Tim Witherspoon was there. Iran Barkley, of course. Ice Cole. You know what I mean? So, and
you saw Donnie Lalonde too? You got to meet up with
Donnie Lalonde was there, yeah. Donnie Lalonde. He first came to my class in the morning. We made a day of it, and then we came up to Times Square, and we sat there. Like after my class, we went and we had some Mexican food, which is really cool. And then we went up to the barbecue place, and I know I ate again too myself. I ate all sorts of things. I mean, I had ribs and margaritas and the whole thing, and everyone just had a good time. It was a blast.
Yeah. By the way,
the energy. Ben, we took up the whole top floor of this restaurant. It was crazy. It's a 3-floor restaurant. Dallas barbecue, it's called, and it's mostly an American thing anyway. But we took up the whole top floor and even part of the second floor. And then when it was the end and we had to leave, we get outside, we took out the whole block in Times Square, and everyone was like, "Who are these guys?" Because everyone was like 100 years old, but everyone knows how to fight, and they're like, "I don't," you know what I mean? So as soon as you start saying names, then people are like, "Oh," and they want to start taking pictures with them and all the rest of it. It was cool.
Yeah, so I'm proper gutted that I wasn't there. Just like to say hello, by the way, to Ellen K. Bromson, Danny
Yes.
Graham, and Marianne Lurie Owen, who's the kind of queen of Las Vegas boxing. So, Silk, okay, it wasn't a hugely big weekend for boxing. You had Edwin Berlanga, who was taking the distance, outpointed Tony Quigley at Madison Square Garden, and Adam Kownacki, who I didn't realize actually has lost 4 fights on the spin now. Looks like the writing's on the wall there. I think one thing you wanted to discuss more, that you find more interesting than anything that happened in world boxing this weekend, is we have a lot of discussions, right, about the technique of boxing. And the one thing about you are you're not afraid to swim against the stream, and you need things proven to you. So you need to test something for yourself before you believe it. So you tend to throw off all those boxing cliches like the body shots stay with you, son. They take you, kill the body, the head will fall. The jab will take you around the world. The right hand will only take you across the street. And it's all about the feet. We've had that one recently. We're always arguing. We're always debating, and we don't always agree with each other. But we're always having this out. And even when it comes down to Sugar Ray Robinson, versus Muhammad Ali in terms of ultimate greatness, for you it comes down to technical boxing and hooks, jabs, blocks, slips, and versatility more than it will ever come down to considerations of resume and how many Hall of Famers this guy beat. You want to see it with your own eyes, and you want to break it down on the evidence that you've seen, regardless of the narrative, okay?
Yeah.
And an interesting thing that you said recently was, because everybody, by the way, and those of you who are tuned in now watching this, we're going to attempt to talk to you about this and discuss this with each other without being able to demonstrate, because we're literally talking heads. We haven't got feet, we've just got core. Okay, Michael, we've just got core to demonstrate with, and only then in the window. You said recently that thing everybody teaches you, you throw your straight right hand when you're orthodox, you turn your foot right, you call it a pivot, okay? You go up on the ball of the foot, yeah? You're not flat. So your heel is off the ground, okay? And then conversely, they teach the same thing on the left hook. When you come back with a left hook, you use the same kind of weight transference, pivot, and then consequently your right heel goes flat, the left hook comes up, and then you're up on the ball of the left foot. Now you said, contrary, whether you do that or not, you said contrary to what people say, that it increases your leverage and power, you say no, it doesn't. If it works at all, it simply is to help your balance, particularly if you miss.
Absolutely.
Yes?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, what is boxing about? Boxing, or what is the knockout punch about? The knockout punch, when you want to knock someone down, knock them out, hurt them. It's about transference of weight. Yeah. And once you start putting the body into sections, like you pivot the foot and you throw your hip and then you throw your arm and you turn your fist like this and your body turns like that, and you have 5 different things you have to coordinate, and that's just it makes the process of throwing the punch much more convoluted than it needs to be. It really is mad simple. Power comes from like the projection of weight. Weight plus speed equals power, right? So if you're projecting forward and you're stepping into the hook, is a much more effective punch than pivoting. What pivoting does, and I've said it before, I'll say it again, it allows you to stay on balance should you miss the punch.
Yeah.
Right? So if you're throwing a big punch and you miss, and you have the ability to pivot that foot, okay, there it is. But if you're pivoting your foot on purpose because you're throwing your left hook, so every time you're throwing your left hook, you're turning your heel out. What you've caused is like a simple kind of like dissociation. And so your foot does this at the same time as your upper body does that. And what happens is there's no traction in the punch. There's no weight. It's like you're trying to coordinate it too much and make it too pretty. And when you try to make it pretty, it loses its effectiveness. Not only that, you put the body into sections. And again, when you put the body into sections, you don't get, let's say you're 160 pounds, you don't get all 160 pounds behind it. You only get like whatever your body weighs from your hip to your foot. You get
Yeah.
maybe your leg behind it, or maybe from your hip to your foot, you lose that because you're pivoting. See, the thing is, the feet, excuse me, your feet in the ground is like real boxers know you grip and you rip. When you
Yeah.
grip the ground, like you open your legs up, you bend the knees, you flex your quads, your feet are like this. Like this is like a hawk's nails on a branch or whatever, or
Yeah.
an animal prey. You grip the ground like this, and then you rip through the punch. You rip through the punch, through the target. You don't. It's not a pretty. You know what I mean? All
Yeah.
coordinated. And you have your body to say.
So there's too many Instagram coaches today giving you these little pretty little diagram type
Yeah.
routines. Because you know something, Michael, I always turn the right hand over with the foot as well. Yeah, that like golfers do. You've seen
Yeah.
the golfer
Well,
swing argument, right? You've seen that.
yeah.
Like I didn't
Well,
watch
here's
golf
the
too much.
thing, Ben. So
Go on.
even with the right hand, right? So even with the right hand, overly pronating on the right hand too is another thing. See, what you want to do is you want to drive through the target with a
Yeah.
left hook. You want the target. Let's say the target's right here in front, right? Let's see, where's my hand? Right there. You don't want to punch to it and bring it back, which that's what the pivot does. The pivot stops you from going all the way. Like when you're pivoting, when you're taught to pivot on a punch, you'll go like this and you'll pull it back. There's no power in that. Power is when you go and through the target. That's when you're punching with power, right? So with the right hand, you're leaning. You have to step in with the left foot, as with the left hook. Same with the right hand. You step in with the left hook with your left foot, and then you turn your shoulders. So you're transferring the weight of your core into the punch. So yes, you come up onto the ball of your foot. You don't necessarily always bring it over. So like it's not always like you're putting out a cigarette with that right hand.
Yeah. Well,
again, these are over exaggerations of what's done. Like somebody's seen it, they saw a fighter do it, and they say, "Oh, that's how you throw a perfect left hook, and that's how you throw a perfect right hand." And it's not so at all. It's like you step in, you may come up, you may bring your heel up off the ground, but you don't have to put that cigarette out. Like, you know what I mean? You're twisting it out. You do not need to do that at all for it to be a knockout punch. In fact, that again, once you start doing it with like your left and your right, you pivot on your right, pivot on your left. I mean, everyone's looking like Elvis Presley doing a hound dog song.
Well, do you know, with the jab, you made another good point when you said the jab is a very definition of an arm punch, usually.
Yes.
And there's a friend of mine called Darren Ammo Hamilton. He won the British light welterweight title. Mm-hmm. You know, he nearly won the Lonsdale bout outright. So he deserves a degree of respect because he's been in there, he's done it. He's won a title over 12 rounds, and he's defended a national title twice.
Yes.
And he was always teaching people, because we used to teach the white collar brigade together, and he was always teaching on the jab to turn their feet. And I was saying, absolutely, I do not do that. Like I might do it on a left hook sometimes. You know what? In reality, you don't. I know for one thing, Silk. I know that I don't always try a left hook and turn the foot, because a lot of the time, organically, you just don't. Even if you do when you're shadowboxing or demonstrating, when you're overly conscious of it, like you just said. But I absolutely wouldn't do it with the left jab. Never, never, never. You keep that foot. You step in with it. Sure, you push off the back foot. Yes. If you need to get closer to the target, if you're not already there, but you do not turn that foot. So, but obviously, coaches have got their own idiosyncratic ways. But to be honest with you, I remember I never used to turn the left hook over at all. I remember thinking the left hook, your lead foot stays flat. It's about the knee and the hip and the shoulder, the core. And then you know what? I got this distinct memory. I saw John Doughty. Remember John Doughty, the middleweight out of Derry, Ireland, who was based in New York, based on the East Coast. Yeah. I saw him at Gleason's training, and he was turning his foot. I don't know who he was. I don't know if he may have been. I don't know what Hector Rocco used to teach, because Hector Rocco was around at this particular time. But John Doughty was working with whoever he was working with in there. Maybe Harry Kite, maybe. And he was turning this foot in a really obvious and quite ornate, studied way. And I remember thinking, because what you got to remember is I've been out the game before I wound up at Gleason's gym at the start of 2003. I'd done like 10 or 11 years of drifting, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and I've been away from the gyms, and this was my big sort of foray back into boxing again. So I'd forgotten some stuff, I guess, or certain things that needed refreshing. So when I saw an up and coming, pro that they were talking about who's going to go do big things, turning his foot on the hook, I suddenly thought, yeah, you know what? I probably used to do that and forgot. So that's the way you're supposed to do it. But if you ever look at yourself, whether it's footage of, you might be working a bag or of your footage of your actual fights, when you see how you do it in the heat of the moment, a lot of the time you don't turn that foot on a left hook at all.
No, it's and that's why I can't understand. Like, I know the times when I have done it and I've dropped people with it. Like, I pivoted falling back on the left hook and then dropped them. Like, I dropped Iran Barkley with that exact punch. I pivot on my left foot, I put my weight back, I pulled back, and I caught him with the left hook. I dropped him, but he got back up. So it wasn't as effective as a punch as if I would have been going forward. You know what I mean? Because when you go forward, you're able to put your body weight behind the punch, and that's what's important.
I hear what you're saying, but my recollection of that hook you hit Barkley with was literally like you put it straight through the target, because Tim Witherspoon said to me, "You got to hit your shoulder, like your other shoulder, this one." Like, you got to act like you want to hit this shoulder. And Tim could throw a shot right. He could throw an overhand right or a big left hook. And to me, that hook you caught Barkley with, despite your description, it looked to me like something you could have maybe taken out a few of the guys in the first few rows as well with that hook.
No, it was a big hook, and I did swing it wide, and that's another thing about the hook that I really like doing. I like opening it up and not just using it on the inside. Using it at long range is great, but I absolutely pulled back and came back with that left hook and beat him to the punch, and I caught him on the point of the chin, and he did drop from it. So it did have weight and it did have power, but it isn't the same thing as driving forward. And if you watch fights when guys throw left hooks where they keep guys down for a 10 count, or they keep them down for, like, they seriously hurt them and they get up and they're really out, you'll see these guys step into the punch. So let's say the left hook, we're used to pivoting on it, right? So the foot is like doing this when you're throwing the left hook. Now what I'm saying is you step in towards your opponent. That way, when you step towards your opponent, you have your upper body weight going in and behind the punch. So it's no longer an arm punch. You can do the same thing with the jab and turn the jab into a power punch by simply stepping in, bringing your left shoulder back, and then twisting through. And it's just as effective as a straight. Well, not just as effective as straight right hand, but it is pretty powerful.
And I think that kind of, let's call it a power jab, I think that works well sometimes. Perhaps when you either slip or just make the movement of a slip to weight onto the front foot, and then you kind of catapult yourself into that shot. You know what I mean? So can you imagine, like, regular jab, slip, power jab? You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
No, absolutely. But the one thing to remember is, now you're pushing. It's like that right hand. You're pushing off the back foot, and it's your weight going forward, right? And you've locked your hip. Like, people say, "Oh, you got to turn your hip into the shot." No. That's not how it works. It's like, first thing you want to do is you want to make sure you say it with your chest. Put your chest through it. And once you put your chest through it and you're stepping in with your foot, your abs are locked. You don't take that hip anywhere. It's all apart. It's like your whole body becomes like a prism like this. It's locked in its movement, and you use that whole side of your body. You don't separate with just like, I don't know, doing a hula dance or something. People say, you got to turn your hip on that punch. You got to turn your hip. It's like, no, it's not about that. It's like your whole side of your body works together and locks up, and you put that through. And if you do that, every single individual can be a puncher. It makes absolutely no sense to me. These guys with 20, 25 fights and 6 knockouts. It's like, how do you do that? Like,
I know people who had even less, Michael. You got a guy like Ian Napper, who was British bantamweight champion, European champion. He fought for the British flyweight title. Now listen, Ian Napper, right? He had sublime skills. If you look at him, he looks like a little pocket Mayweather. He's got the shoulder roll, all of that stuff, those subtleties. Defensively, he's wonderful, and his combinations are absolutely beautiful and on point. But I don't want to use that cliche about couldn't crack an egg. But he just wasn't scoring stoppages. And the first stoppage he did score was when one of his opponents, Lee Haskins, a kind of Prince Nassim Hamed clone from out of Bristol, got a dislocated arm and couldn't come out for whatever round it was. It was round at the 6th or 7th round. He had to call it, and that was Ian Nepper's first inside the distance win. Ian Nepper stopped nobody. And obviously, people are encouraged to believe, he's a sublime boxer. It's that kind of Willie Peck type syndrome, but he's just not a puncher, and that's the end of it. What you appear to be suggesting is bullshit. Everybody can be more of a puncher than that if their mechanics are correct. Yeah.
Yes.
And think like Nepper, right? I'm going to tell you this. His trainer Brian Lawrence, who's a pretty respected coach on this London boxing scene, certainly. He would teach the hook, and Nepper would do it. They would hook like that. When the hook finishes this whole part, don't get me started on palm down, right, Silk? But this is how he would hook. He would do it like that. That's the way Brian Lawrence would teach it. You know why? Because that's probably the way Brian Lawrence got taught when he was at Repton Boxing Club by the amateur coaches in England who would teach you with them textbook shots where you turn the hands like that. So maybe that is why he never knocked anybody out with a left hook, just for starters, okay?
I mean, there's that, and then there's the actual his own, his biology, he may have light bone. Like sometimes your bones, if like it's guys with the heavy hands, and even if they're skinny and they have heavy hands, and it's like a mace at the end of that chain, like the knights used to fight with back in the medieval days.
Tommy Hearns.
You see a lot of skinny guys. Alexis Arguello can really crack because they're hard punches. They got heavy hands, skinny arms, and they know how to crack. And timing is a part of it too. So there's the weight of your hands. There's can you turn your body through? Are you stepping in with your foot? Your head is an extremely important part of punching with power. You'll see a lot of guys. Look, I'll say like Vinny Pazienza, for instance, or Johnny Tapia, and you'll see they'll when they punch, they'll pull their head this way and they'll punch here.
Yeah.
So the head will go this way before they actually punch, and then they start doing this, which turns their punches into arm punches. Now, if they were to if they had their head over to the left and they brought this all the way over, if they brought everything over at the same time, pure knockout, absolutely 100% knockout. People they discount the fact that the head weighs something. I don't know if everyone's head weighs like 15, 20 pounds. I don't know, 5 pounds. But that extra, imagine being, someone throwing a 5-pound weight at your face. It's added weight. It means something. There's a difference in there. You know what I mean? So that's what it is. Weight plus speed equals power. If you can turn your body weight into the punch, and you can get all your body to work together, like sync it all up and do it, you can punch and hurt anybody. Absolutely, 100%.
So you think you could improve any fighter's power, any fighter who came to you with good tools in other aspects of boxing?
Yeah.
You think you could turn him to a relative puncher if he wasn't getting the kind of stoppages? Because the thing is, it interests me. I didn't even know until recently that your boxing value base was you should never be looking to win on points. You should always be looking for a stoppage or KO, an early shower, however early it comes, even if it's only marginal. And that isn't really my attitude. I've got to be honest. Killer instinct was something I wasn't really full of. I love the art of boxing, as you know, and I was infatuated with Muhammad Ali and Shoaib Leonard. And I kind of got off on the idea that people in my locality recognize me as being able to emulate the moves of fighters who were black fighters, predominantly.
Yeah, sure. But you remember that that both Sugar Ray and Ali, like their intent when they go in the ring, their intent was not for you to go the distance. Like they
you know what? I guess it's what I tuned into, and the balletic art and the style and profile, and I missed the point, the essential point of the more ruthless thing. And so my whole kind of raison d'etre, to be honest with you, I was thinking I was very much any stoppage was I didn't have many, but I got a few. Then it was a bonus to me. It was, to be honest, when I first got a few, my first senior bout I won by stoppage, and it was kind of a surprise to me and kind of a novelty. And I thought, wow, and I thought, is he really? Can he continue? He looks fine to me. You know what I mean? Is he really? He's not even complaining. It's like he agrees with the stoppage. But I didn't know until recently that your value base was the more of the kind of cold killer, forgive the expression, kind of mindset where where you said that you shouldn't be looking to trust the judges in the first place, more like a Marvin Hagler kind of mindset.
I think that's the base, and that's the best way to approach boxing when it gets into competitive boxing. I mean, I think a lot
in the pros, right? Not the amateurs.
Yeah, like in the pros, but the disservice that a lot of announcers have done is exactly like the stuff you're saying right now. It's like they can't tell you anything pertinent about boxing. They're just telling you they're talking heads, and they're talking from a place where they have no knowledge, absolutely
What do you
no
think,
knowledge.
Michael? You know, Frank Lotierzo, who's a guy on Facebook who's a pretty good boxing analyst. I know he doesn't agree with you about Robinson and Ali, for instance, but he's a pretty good analyst, and he's an ex-professional fighter, not of your kind of ilk, but he did fight pro, and he sparred with Sugar Ray Leonard as well, which is that's worth
It's huge.
quite a lot to me. So, but anyway, he was saying he cannot stand this new breed of commentator. Even the Timothy Bradley school, and Timothy Bradley's an accomplished fighter who recently got inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame. But he says he can't stand all these buzzwords like check hook, step, back step shuffle, the hop pivots, and all the rest of it. And do you think there's a lot of nonsense which is polluting the airwaves now on boxing?
Yeah, I think that people try to make it a little bit more than what it is. You know what I mean? And I think sometimes if you can it's almost like you hear those announcers and they're talking about a fight and they try to put their stamp on it by saying something like Larry Merchant was always doing that really. And a few other guys, they say certain things that they go for that sound bite. You know what I mean? Yeah. So they're looking for that word like check hook or whatever it is. And they're looking for that certain word that's going to catch on. It's going to almost legitimize their presence and justify why they're on the air in the first place.
Well, George Foreman, some people criticize George Foreman's, boxing days as a boxing analyst, but I thought George was great.
Yeah,
I thought George was right in the money, and why wouldn't he be? Come on, why the hell wouldn't he be? Because it's not like he's a dumb guy. So he's had that experience. The only way he'd be useless is if he was so diminished cerebrally he could not relate that stuff.
Exactly.
His experience is priceless. So, and the thing is, he said, I always mention it to people sometimes when they're getting on my nerves when I think they're more journalists and boxing person. He said, "You don't really know boxing, Larry. You just speak boxing." And it's a bit of a bitch thing to say on the air a little bit to a guy that your colleague. But George is ultimately right. When he said, Larry, you don't really know boxing, you just speak boxing. Essentially, that is the truth. Because George Foreman does know boxing, inside out, So, and I think that is the problem. I mean, someone like Howard Cosell, for instance, right, who I really didn't have a lot of time for, but you liked him for his kind of iconic. Just the iconic.
I thought he brought an entertaining energy to it. I know that he wasn't. Yeah, he was an entertainer. He wasn't somebody saying he wasn't pretending he knew. Like all these guys talking about, you know what I mean? Oh my God, this jab, he did this with that, and they've never experienced it. They've never felt it. They've never thrown it. They've never, So how do you? I understand in other sports, football, soccer, the announcers, they've all had this wonderful experience doing it. But it's just not so with boxing, And I know everyone's experience is different too. So people are like, my way isn't the ultimate way to do anything. Like the other fighters and trainers have gone through their way and they have a different way of explaining it. So it's all not relevant. But basically, I try to take it down to like just his basic nucleus of how you get maximum power, and then how it deviates from there is how it deviates.
Well, you know what I think, because I don't always agree with you on everything.
Well, you should.
But yeah, well, of course. Well, if I was you, I would, wouldn't I? I mean, it's that simple. But so I don't always agree with you, but I do. But obviously, I agree with you frequently and often. Obviously, we identify, and that's why we wanted to do this thing in the first place. Yeah. But I do think you have a very rare knowledge of boxing, which is not parallel to many other places. And then what I get to thinking now is, like myself, you do a lot of personal training, right? And you know, maybe you figured out that's where the money is. And I know you do it high end. I know you've trained some gorgeous models as well. And you know, life could be worse. We shouldn't feel sorry for you, and we should not have a whip round for you anytime soon. I really don't need to start selling magazines in your favour. But sometimes I think, okay, well, why isn't the Silk training some top fighters? Why wasn't he training Josh Taylor the other week, or at least in the corner? And I do think, sometimes are you selling yourself short that you're not a more cutting edge of training? Because I think is I wish I was young again, and I would come to New York and I'd say, okay, you train me. You're my choice, okay? You're the one. Never mind Eddie Futch or Enzo and Rios. I want you to train me if I can be 18 again. That's my conviction as an older man now, having the wisdom to make that call. I want you to train me. So then I think, should you? I mean, you might be ludicrous. You know, you might be perfectly happy the way things are. But I wonder, is it time you made more of an assault on the? I'm not saying you haven't trained
Yeah.
professionals, but you know what I mean.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah. No,
maybe
I
you
know
should be
exactly
one of
what
those major trainers in the world because they're not going to find too many people who could do it as well as you. But right now, you're not doing it.
you know. I truth be told, I've trained some amateurs. Like I just had what's hard for me. Like I love working with people. I love training people. And then when I get into training with, like, I've trained a few competitive fighters throughout my years from when I retired up until um, just recently, actually.
Yeah,
I trained a few amateurs, and you know they're into it. They were novices. They were starting out, and there was one in particular that could have been. I'm telling you, Ben, you could have been amazing. Really,
yeah,
like at a pro level, but it's so hard to find that one that is also like impervious to discomfort and impervious to pain. And so I see these things that happen, and I see these like these little nuances that certain fighters have, and you see it, and you try to point it out to them, or you try to mask it so it won't be an issue later on, or you try to get, you know, I think too much about it, and I don't know, it's a lot it's a lot of work, like training somebody, but not only training them physically and getting them to execute it right. There's also that mental part that's so important. If they don't have that, that's going to be a problem in the future. And maybe that's something I need myself to let go of, and not kind of harp on that. Like mentally, when I start training somebody, I'm like, okay, you're really good, but I can see this is going to be a problem down the road.
yeah.
Maybe it's not, or maybe if it is, then it has to
Cross it
be
when you
that.
come to it. Yeah,
Yeah, let it happen, and then correct it afterwards. You know what I mean? And
yeah,
so I also I push really hard. Like I'm one of those kind of trainers that I don't care what level you are. If it's your first time in, I'm taking you to your limits, and then we're continuing to expand from there. And a lot of people aren't comfortable with that,
yeah,
and I know a lot of competitive fighters aren't comfortable with that either. So I really need that one individual that I can have like complete autonomy over, and you know, and like just like load up all that information, and then let them do with it what they will. That's kind of like what I think a trainer should do. And so yes, I have trained a couple of fighters that were really competitive, and they looked like amazing. Like I've had them in the ring sparring with guys that are way more advanced by years with them, and these guys are looking at like slipping and counter, like with his hands down here. And this is a guy who's like first year, and he's fighting a kid that was representing Ireland. He's sparring him, and the kid slipped and whack, it hits him with a body shot right under, like lifted him right up right there. And it was just so beautiful to see, because it's just a matter of like, it's, you know, it's repetition. It's
yeah,
repetition. The more you repeat it, you get confident, and the more confident you get, the stronger the two reinforce one another. And so I love doing that stuff. I love seeing it happening, but it's really hard to find a personality like that, character that's willing to go deep like that. So yeah, getting involved with like top rated world rated fighters would be, I think that's where I would do best. But then they don't know me the way I know me, or the way you know me either. So it's not like they're all of a sudden they're gonna like take me over James or any of their other trainers that
this is the thing. It's all about, like everything else, it's about building a reputation, isn't it? And you know what? I see total chancers who jump into the white collar scene these days. They grab hold of a couple of very spurious, you know, useless white collar fighters.
Hmm.
They start convincing those two first that they might have, that they are the, you know, the bastard love child of
Hmm.
Freddie Roach and Eddie Futch. And
Yeah,
then and then literally, Silk, they start talking about going for their pro license and building their reputation. And
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
talking about complete chancers who come out of nowhere,
yeah,
you know, and they're already well into their 30s, acting
yeah,
like they've been about this all this time, yeah?
yeah,
When you know they haven't, you know they couldn't tell you
yeah,
anything about Soul Mamby or anything like
yeah,
that,
yeah,
okay? You've either paid your due. Yes, this is like a snob thing. This is a members only club. I'm sorry, but that's the way it works, right? You pay
yeah,
your dues, you pay your subscription over years and years,
yeah,
your pound of flesh, and then you get accepted. And the way I mean, I didn't sound proud, nothing like that. But my acceptance is that I have the respect of people like you and people like Donny, Lalonde, and people like Tim with a Spoon or Dennis Rappaport or anybody else.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
that is, it hasn't made me wealthy, but it's where I want to be. Okay, so
Yeah.
but you get these guys who come out of nowhere, and they will in this country they will apply for a pro license now. A lot of them will come to nothing, of course, but some of them, they'll manage to convince people in a slightly more serious setup around a fighter who might have a bit of backing that they know what they're doing. And the next thing you know, they're infiltrating the game, and that seems to be more not just more possible nowadays in the world we live in and the society we live in, but also it just seems to be more of a thing for people. Because in the old days, I don't think you suddenly decided you wanted to be this great big boxing guru, whereas it seems to be something that is like a more common phenomenon nowadays, where, like I say,
Well,
people come from nowhere with no background,
internet,
nothing.
you know what the internet has done, Ben? In my eyes, this internet it's like the cesspool of the people that are really over ego, like their egos are just like massive and out of control, and you look, and people are just hungry to get that confirmation from other people, and
Validation.
yeah, they need that validation. Yeah, they need that validation in there, and it's narcissistic. That's really what I want to say. It's like this petri dish of narcissisms and narcissistic people, and they don't. Everything is based on winning and not what they know, and a lot of fighters, unfortunately, I mean, my mind goes in so many directions when I get to this subject, but so many fighters, like we said it before. I mean, I've talked about it before with you, and it doesn't evolve. Boxing doesn't evolve. You'll get 3 or 4, 5 good fighters that evolve, and then basically the rest of them don't. They stay the same because the trainers that are training them are not bringing anything new. It's always just your natural ability, your natural sense of competitiveness or your attitude or whatever it is. That's what gets you over, and everything's average. And we have like 5 exceptional people, but you have hundreds of thousands of people that do boxing. How does that work? It's like, no, it shouldn't be like that. We should have, like, we're about to have Spence and the Spence and the Crawford fight, and you have 2 exceptional talents. Why does it take so long to get to that? You know what I mean? It's like there should be more than just 2 of them in one division.
What I think it is as well is I think it's the competition thing, because you see the way something really obvious like sprinting, track athletics has improved, and they've shaved partial seconds off times over the last several decades, because it's the best, constantly racing against the best in elite competition all the time, looking for that tiniest of edges. And human beings are a progressive species, and you're going to get it. You're going to find those margins, and someone's going to jump a bit further, run a bit faster, and they're going to keep doing that. But in boxing, when you have these more than ever now, fighters tend to avoid each other, and they tend to talk more about about the fact they might fight each other at some point, and they argue about it more than they actually do it. Inevitably, we've said it before, I'm sure, but if I put you in the gym training for a fight and I put you in a bunch of really good middleweights, to get you ready, really elite world-class guys, you're going to do better than if I give you a bunch of white-collar guys, aren't you? Right? So it's going to make you sharper. So
yeah, in most cases it would, but you know what I mean. Then there's always that other side of it. But yeah, as long as you're right. As long as you're open to learning, you're going in there to learn, and you're going in there not to. It's not like this. You're going in there. It's like self-preservation. It can't be fear. It has to be like an open. Your trainer tells you you're going in there to learn. Don't go in there and try to prove yourself. Don't go in there try to be brave. Don't try to make it a war, because it's not going to work for you. It's not going to be a good thing. You see a lot of trainers, they do that. They think you have to go in there and establish yourself as the dominant one, and it's like, no. Give it up to the guy that's getting that's acknowledge what he is. Give him his respect, and go in there and learn, and then you'll get your chance as you go along. We'll build this thing up. We'll build up your abilities, but you can't, bring a pea shooter to that kind of fight with these guys that are world champions and legitimately strong, proven fighters. Yeah, it's Boxing, I mean, it's a beautiful thing about boxing. It's always the wild, wild west, right? So you never know what you're going to get. But
No.
basically, there has to be like that middle ground. It's got to like start elevating itself at some point. We can't, guys who are running middle of the road are the same as guys that were running middle of the road in the 1930s.
Well, you recently did a post. You recently did a post about Jerry Quarry versus the leading heavyweights of today, which is
Yeah.
probably a kind of a yardstick for what you're saying now. In that
Yes. Yeah.
you ended up concluding with matching Jerry Quarry at his peak
Yeah.
against Usyk, Fury, Joshua, and Wilder. You basically said 10 fights,
Yeah.
maybe Jerry Quarry maybe wins 6 of them. You know, was your
Yeah,
opinion.
against the Wilder, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I thought you were. I thought
Yeah,
maybe you were talking about an aggregate of all the fights, but no, you said maybe against Wilder. Yeah, but
yeah,
the point was Jerry matched up favourably against all of them. You know, I mean, obviously,
yeah.
the big argument where Fury's concerned. And by the way, I've declined to talk much about Fury until he signs a contract. I said I wasn't going to give him much attention or much oxygen until he signs a contract to fight. I know he will not give a damn, and I know I'm not on it. I say I'm not on his radar. I think he has vaguely heard of me, but other than he doesn't give a damn whether I talk to him or not. But I'm just not going to do it. But just since we mention him now, the big argument about Fury is the size, right? Which you're not remotely impressed by that.
No, absolutely not. Yeah, size means absolutely. It means something if you if you allow it. If you don't prepare for it, size is going to be an issue. But if you prepare for it and you have an intelligent trainer, size has nothing to do with it. Length, reach has nothing to do with it. If you have an intelligent trainer that knows what he's doing and knows boxing, any advantage that one opponent has, you can use it against him. And that's the kind of knowledge your trainer is going to have. You can't come in there against something how do you make changes in the middle of the fight? You have to change up, and if your trainer doesn't have that knowledge and you haven't done it in training beforehand, then yeah, you're going to lose. So somebody like like Fury, for instance, he's a big dude. He's gonna make the fight ugly. He's gonna do like the blob on you. He'll rest his weight on you. He'll pull you. He'll lift. So for someone like Jerry Quarry, that's probably gonna be a problem if he allows that to happen. But there are ways for Jerry Quarry that won't happen if he fights a certain way, and he has the ability to do it. It's just whether he has the knowledge or whether his trainers had that knowledge. Because in Jerry Quarry, you had a guy that was, one, extremely competitive, two, no fear, maybe to a fault, three, he hit hard, four, you could tell him anything. If you told him run through that brick wall, it's on fire on the other side, he'd do it. And that's what you want from a fighter. Once you get those ingredients together, man, you can do anything with that guy. But he's got to be getting that right information. And I don't think anyone ever taught Jerry Quarry about defense. It was always about be a tough guy, take the punch, and come back with something of your own. But Jerry Quarry was fast. He was durable. He took a great shot. He had heart. And he had talent. He was excellent. He was an excellent fighter. Yeah, he may have been small for today's heavyweight, but if you were eating and training like today's heavyweight, that wouldn't be a problem either. That's
John Doyle just interjected. He said, "I think Fury's size is a handicap to him. I have long thought that. Same with most gargantuan heavyweights. But when so the thing is, right, you're a charming rather than an objectionable person by nature, but you must feel, or I get the impression, you must feel that there's actually very few people who truly know boxing, and consequently, you must have endless conversations with people where most of the time you are politely saying, "Yeah, whereas you're in your mind, you're thinking this person doesn't really know what they're talking about. True or false?"
Yeah, sometimes once you had those conversations for so long, and then you just kind of what they are, and you just let them happen, and that you really changing a human being's mind is not something that's easily done.
And I'm not even talking, by the way, about the man in the street or the man on a bar.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to talk to a famous ex-boxer about boxing. I'm talking about people in the game, even who you're
Yeah,
probably still suffering,
yeah,
and smiling and thinking
yeah.
you still don't really know what you're talking about,
Oh
and you're
yeah,
subscribing to a
yeah,
whole load of mythology and a whole
yeah,
load of narrative over
yeah.
generations handed down to you. You must feel in a bit of a rare echelon, in a bit of a bubble where there's not many people who can really discuss boxing with you. Sounds like I'm being very sycophantic this week, but
Well, you know what happens is it's kind of like you get. I mean, I love the sport. You love the sport, and we endure what must be endured in order to continue to like love the sport the way we do. I don't know. I I get into conversations with people about it, and you just you kind of, yeah, you shake your head and you say yes, and you know you're not going to change anyone's mind. Every once in a while I get a little bit, you know what I mean, I get a little bit feisty, I'll get combative, and I'll be like, well, what about this, and I do that as much to test my knowledge as it is to test another person's knowledge. I think that's very
yeah.
important. Like, to teach is to learn, and as long
Well,
as you're teaching, you're always learning.
that was the thing where we came in when you posted that thing a few days ago, and you said big myth busting. That the pivot on the right hand or the left hook does not increase the power or leverage. One
Yeah.
guy simply said, many people would disagree with you, Michael.
Uh-huh.
And you said, well, okay, that's swell. Let me know why and break it down for me. I'm here to learn.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah. I am really open to learning, but it's just like I know that my experience isn't everybody's experience, but I know that one thing I did once I started boxing, and even before I started boxing, I used to watch boxing. Like, before I boxed, I knew my father boxed. My mother and father were divorced. I didn't think I was going into boxing. I lived with my mom, and I would still Saturday mornings. I would watch Saturday afternoons. I would watch boxing. We used to go to church Sundays at church. As soon as the church sermon was over, I'd run out to the alley and I'd look at my neighbor in somebody's. I didn't even know who they were. I'd look through their back apartment, their back house window, and I'd sit down low and I'd watch them watching the fights. So I'd be watching into their. It's kind of creepy, I know, but I'd be watching the fights, like, Yaki Lopez, and then all the Danny Little Red Lopez, all those guys.
yeah,
I'd be
Mike
watching them
Ayala.
fight. Yeah, Mike Ayala, yes, absolutely. And I'm taking in all that information. I'm just watching it, and it's all. I'm not hearing anything from any commentators. I'm just watching the whole time, and so by the time I start going into it and competing myself and learning, and in retrospect from the mistakes I made, it's not just good things I've done. I've made more mistakes than I've done good things in boxing, and I've learned that isn't the way to do it. And I
Yeah,
know it isn't the way to do it because I felt the pain from doing it
make
the
those
wrong way.
mistakes.
You know what I mean?
Interestingly, by the way, Don Maguire, who's made a few comments in the course of this broadcast, says that will we ever see another war like Pavlik versus Taylor? With Kelly Pavlik versus Jermaine Taylor. That was a good fight. It seems a strange template to reference when you talk about will we ever see another war as epic as that. Not sure how you feel about that question. I mean, there was the fight recently, right? Munguia versus Deverenchenko, which was I got to be honest, I only saw the highlights of it, but everybody said that fight of the year contender, a total hanger, exciting fight that was ultimately won on the basis of a 12-round knockdown. But I don't know if you saw that fight, Don, but everybody's talking it up as possibly the best fight of the first part of 2023 at least.
Well, I think also with boxing, it's sometimes it's very hard to it's hard to tell the difference when you're seeing, like, it's hard to tell the levels for somebody that hasn't been in it for a long time. I mean, it's exciting to you because you relate to a person's personality, to a fighter's personality. You see the punches hitting, and you feel, you're empathetic, and you feel for their pain and discomfort. And the fact that what Kelly Pavlik did was amazing, and the fact that he was able to come back from being so hurt and then to come back and to win that fight, that's the ultimate thing that everyone always talks about. Oh my God, he was down, he was hurt, he was da da da. The next round he came back and knocked him out. That's the epitome of the fight. That's what the fight means in the ring, and that's what the fight means metaphorically, like in life, right? So
what I love about that particular situation, because I believe that Taylor knocked him down it's like the second or third round, I believe. It was
Yeah,
the first 3 rounds.
yeah,
And then the referee went over to, and sometimes the referee comes and said, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" A bit like, remember Pinkman Thomas and Mike Tyson.
yeah,
Sometimes there's almost a dramatic nature to it that makes things
yeah,
worse.
yeah.
Like when the
When
referee
you
said,
relate to them too, when you like them, you just like a person's personality. He's like
yeah.
you.
But
You
the
relate
referee
to him.
came over to Pavlik's corner and said, "Are you okay?" And he smiled at him and looked at him and he said, "He caught me with a shot. I'm good." As if to say, "Listen, you can't go in the rain without getting wet." He's
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
"Chill, I'm fine." You know what I mean?
yeah,
But Nassim Hamed, when Nassim Hamed got knocked over by Augie Sanchez, and the referee came over to his corner and said, "How are you, Nas?" And he said, "I'm fine, thanks. How are you?" And it was
yeah,
I like seeing that kind of
yeah.
presence,
No,
of
yeah,
mind in the face
yeah.
of that
It's
person.
not the
Like you say,
expected answer, that's for sure. It's not what you'd
no,
expect to hear. But
exactly.
yeah, but that was an amazing comeback and everything. But when you take a look at that, when you take a look at there's levels to it, you know what I mean? And then when you see a person like when you see a fight going ebb and flow, that's like of Sugar Ray Leonard Hearns or Hagler Duran or you know what I mean, Ali Frazier or those kind. When you see guys with skills doing it, I don't know. There's just something about it. It's just another level altogether.
It's funny you mentioned Hagler Duran in there because that's always the fight. At the time, that fight was considered a bit of a disappointment or
Oh, in
slightly
terms of
anticlimactic.
excitement, yeah.
It
In
was
terms of excitement,
slightly anticlimactic, but I think that fight has aged so well. As
yeah,
a 13-year-old, when I saw it, I guess I thought it wasn't. I liked it, and I watched it a few times on the VHS recording
yeah,
at home. But I suppose I thought it wasn't, and I guess I believe what Ring Magazine was telling me to a degree back then. And they
yeah,
said, that it seemed slightly out of sync, and it
yeah,
wasn't like a big, exciting super
yeah,
fight.
yeah,
But when you watch it today, and I think I can watch it as many
yeah,
times, I can watch it
yeah,
endless times, Hagler Duran,
yeah.
because I think it really is a
Yeah,
true clinic from both of them.
yeah,
I do think in
absolutely.
day
I think
one,
you're like your fight IQ, right? Your fight IQ
yeah,
is expanded, and you see, like just the fact what you appreciate defense, you appreciate the setup, you appreciate his positioning, and
and
you
the
know what I
fact
mean?
Hagler fights both stances, and it's interesting to see how Duran deals him when he's in a southpaw
Yeah,
stance and everything else. And it's a clinic on the inside as well as at range.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I mean, it's an obvious triangle example in boxing history, but don't you think it is fascinating the way Duran can extend Hagler and give him the problems and cause him that kind of self-doubt to a degree?
Yeah,
Hearns gets annihilated by Hagler, but Hearns
yeah,
annihilates Duran.
yeah,
Leonard goes
yeah,
in the way he fares in the mix with all of them. That is a
yeah.
very fascinating quadrant of boxing results between those guys, is it not?
Yeah, and that's why people always go to that, you know, the quick thing like styles make fights, and
Yeah.
it's you know what I mean, and
Is
it's
that
never
another cliche, Michael? Is that another cliche? Overly,
that's definitely a glitchy. Yeah, that's a glitchy.
is it? So you don't subscribe to that as a kind of, or you don't find it very useful for people to point
No,
out.
I don't. I think there's always something more than that. And the thing is, once you delve into it and you find out what it is that makes this guy difficult for the other guy, then at that point you have the opportunity to defeat that individual without, you know what I mean? That's what
Yeah.
boxing's all about. Is taking what that guy does good and what you do, what I do good, and I'm like, I have to figure this dude out and find a way to get to him, even though my styles dictate that I'm going to lose, right? But what am I going to do to make sure I win and not just go the distance or not just get in there with him because and then go through the motions? You know what I mean? So that's kind of what happens with boxing. We kind of like accept the tags that are put on us. We stay within the limitations of, you know, this is your ceiling, these are your walls. You stay within those things and do what you got to do. And every single individual that's a fighter, they can make a fight difficult for anybody. Everyone's got two arms, a brain, all the rest of that kind of stuff. But if your job is done right and you have the right trainers behind you, hey, listen, anything is impossible. An upset won't be an upset. We'll be seeing a lot more competitive fights as well. I do believe that.
It's funny. Somebody had an interesting understanding of the term upset once. I
Yeah,
posted one of my threads years ago, and I was talking about the biggest upsets in boxing history. Okay, and
yeah,
somebody said Jack Johnson versus James J. Jeffries, and I said that wasn't an upset, because Johnson was strongly favoured to beat the old champ coming out of 6 years retirement. So I said, that wasn't an upset, and this guy said yes, it was. Loads of people were upset about it. There was race riots and all sorts. I didn't. I thought that was a great interpretation. He said
Yeah,
lots of people were upset about that fight. But
that's funny.
Don McGuire has asked. He said, "What do you think the next stop for Haney is since Loma figured out his sequence? I don't think Haney can beat Stevenson or Tank Gervonta Davis. To be honest, I don't think he'd beat. I don't think he would beat Stevenson. No, Shakur Stevenson. He looks real good to me.
Yeah.
And I think I would fancy Davis to beat Haney as well. That's my answer.
Yeah. You know, a lot of people are coming down hard on Haney since the Lomachenko fight, and I think it's because obviously they wanted Lomachenko to win. So there's, you're a little bit hurt by that, and you're coming down on him. I didn't think it was
big robbery.
Yeah. I mean, I thought it was a very tight fight. I thought it was very close, but I kind of gave it to Haney based on his I don't know. Lomachenko lost that fight, if anything, and you know what I mean. Like he should have been consistent throughout the fight, and he
didn't score it though, did you? You didn't score it, right?
I didn't score. I didn't put on points, but I did kind of do a round thing.
It's neither here nor there, then, right? It's neither here nor there. You got to score it.
You really do. I think that there's a way I've talked to you about it before. There's a way in which you watch fights and you watch the energy between them, and you try not to focus on looking at your favorite fighter, which is what people do. They look at the guy they like, and they say he's not hurt, he didn't get hit, he's not bleeding, so you know what, I'm giving it around to my guy. It's like that's not the way to do it. You got to see what's happening between the guys,
in the middle,
crossing the boundaries. You know what I mean? Is he? What's happening? It's not whether he's stepping forward or not. It's whether his punches are scoring or not, and you're looking at this dynamic and the energy between them and who's doing the most. And so by the end of it, I trust my instincts. I thought Haney did more. There was times when Lomachenko just kind of went dead, and he shouldn't have, and this fight was his to win, and he should have taken from round one. He should have been on this kid's chest, and he should have made him uncomfortable, but he didn't. He gave him the distance to make himself comfortable. And I don't know, maybe he felt this kid's punches as he was stronger than he thought they were going to be. It could be any number of things. Lomachenko, he's definitely not the kind of guy to absorb punches and come back with them, right? So he's going to have to feel comfortable before he's able to let go of his punches. He's not like Joe Frazier, Iran Barkley. They'll absorb your shots to land their own. He's not willing to do that, and that was the difference maker in the fight, really, because if you're talking about like who put more fists on the scoring parts of that guy's body the most, I mean, it looked to me like the kid did it, Haney. And he's not my favorite fighter, but just calling it what it is. I love Lomachenko's style, I love his ability, his fight personality, all the rest of that kind of stuff. He's a great dude. I love the way he was class, his class going into the fight and all the rest of that kind of stuff. I really dig that. But when it came time, when that bell rang, he just didn't do enough.
Okay. It's something I felt strongly about it at the time. And I know other people did. I know Oscar De La Hoya felt strongly about it. He said anybody who didn't think Lomachenko won knows shit about boxing, that the old Roger Mayweather line. But I'm forced to accept, when you say that you didn't see it that way, I'm forced to accept that it's not quite that simple. It is interesting. As you might know, I'm working on a book about boxing's most controversial decisions. And in the course of that, I intend to try and examine the whole nature of scoring and how that scoring system has developed and evolved since the days of fight to a finish with bare knuckles, into this more kind of genteel kind of substructure that we work in now. So I'll keep everybody posted on that. But we're closing in on 1 hour. I've got to tell you, Silk, I think we were pretty good this week. I wasn't sure because you said you wanted to talk about pivots and go from there. You wanted to talk about the pivot myth. And I thought, how well is that going to work in a podcast just with two talking heads? But I've got to tell you, I think we pulled it off.
Yeah, no, I think this is it's a lot of fun for me to to talk with you and get people's feedback on it, and we'll continue to try to push the sport further and try to give people alternate options, give people options, and when you give people options, you you kind of like challenge the minds and you challenge the perceptions of boxing. And I think that's really important for the sport to continue to grow. We can't stay, stayed in one place and thinking the same things because they're old, outdated, and it's not the truth. And if you were to look at it the way it actually is, it's not the truth. So in closing, what I wanted to say about, if people want to check out what I say about pivoting with the left hook or the right hand on boxing, it's like, do this. Watch Ali Frazier, the first fight. When Frazier drops Ali, he drops him with the left hook. He's not pivoting on that hook. He's stepping in on that left hook. He's bringing his shoulder back so he has his upper body weight. He's coming forward with that hook. The shoulder, elbow, fist are at the same point at that, same height at the point of impact. And he's stepping it forward with his left foot. That means he has forward momentum. Power goes forward, right? Energy goes forward. Leonard versus Dave Boy Green. Look at that left foot. He put him to sleep there. There's absolutely, the left foot steps in. There's no pivot on the left hook. Donald Curry versus Milt McCrory. There's no pivot. Donald Curry stepping in on the left hook. Hits him bang on the chin because he has his body weight behind the punch. But he steps in, forward momentum. Mike McCullum versus Donald Curry. Same thing. Mike McCullum drops to the left, comes up with the left hook, steps in. Holyfield versus Michael Dokes, the same thing. Steps in with the left hook and cracks him, and that's the punch that drops Michael Dokes. So these are the things that people should. I don't know why people aren't seeing that, because some trainers try to make it like it's more magical than it is. It's not. It's mad simple. But you have to allow your body to do its thing, and don't start investing in all these fallacies of what I mean. There's more to it than what there really is. Ultimately, boxing is about me putting my fist on your face more than you put it on
body, right? Target area.
Yeah.
But when you say don't make it seem more complicated than it is, I can't help remembering the historian Steve Compton's words to you when he said, "Oh, come on, Michael Olajide, now you're going to try and make out like this is some kind of Jedi Knight bullshit." He said, "It's boxing, for Christ's sake." And he was, I guess, he was trying to accuse you as a former fighter who's been in with the likes of Tommy Hearns and Aaron Buckley of trying to mystify the whole business, which actually you're not.
The thing is, it is more complex than what he thinks it is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm not saying like, because look there's so many styles, right? There's so many styles. There's almost like you can't say there's one way in which to do it, because there are just so many styles, and everyone's effective in their own thing. I look at it like this: boxers, everyone has their own way to hunt, right?
Yeah, that's your phrase.
Yeah, everyone has their own way to hunt, and so you may throw your left hook that way. It doesn't matter. Ultimately, I'm saying this is, if you're talking about effective and efficient punching, this is the best way to do it. But effective and efficient, if I'm fighting somebody and they understand what effective and efficient punching is, then I'm not going to be able to get to them, because my timing is a predictable timing. Now, if he fights somebody that doesn't fight, like look at when Forrest Whitaker fought, who's that crazy kid that was smoking all the time? He fought him on HBO. He beat Forrest Whitaker for the welterweight title.
You mean Ricardo? You mean Vernon Forrest and Ricardo Mayorga?
Yeah, Mayorga. Yeah. Now his timing is actually, Mayorga's acting. Mayorga's boxing is absolutely unpredictable. He moves his body and the punch comes after it. You know what I mean? And so here you have a guy as accomplished and polished as Whitaker, and he can't do anything with this.
Vernon Forrest, Vernon Forrest.
Yeah, Vernon Forrest. Yes. Vernon Forrest. I said Vernon Forrest. Yes. And sorry about that. And he couldn't do anything with him, because he beat Sugar. Right, he's Shane Mosley. He beat Shane Mosley, who's a considerably much better fighter than Mayorga.
Absolutely.
But the way in which the punches come at you were different, and so resiliency comes into it at that point. Your ability to take a punch, that it's it. Boxing is that unpredictable.
Yeah,
it is.
At least one thing you will never get from Sugar and Silk is the cliches. It's been a pleasure to talk to all of you once again on a Sunday afternoon / evening here in the UK. Remember that we're brought to you exclusively by Ace Podcast Nation. Thanks very much to Simon Willis for facilitating all of this stuff. We will be back next week. There's got to be some fights next weekend, I'm sure. And we are slowly moving towards the big one of Crawford Spence a little later next month. So a pleasure as always, Silk. I'm glad you had a good time this weekend.
Thank you. It was a good time. Good rap, man.
Everybody, thanks for tuning in and be lucky. Keep punching. We'll see you next week.